Hey, what's going on everyone? It's Keith here again, and it's been a minute since we've done this, but we are taking a look at Cyberpunk 2077, and this is running on a Radeon RX 6900 XT with the, well, it's our standard test bench running the 5900X and 32 gigs of DDR4 3600, well, I mean, it's X570. Smart access memory is enabled, but what's really good here and what's, what brought us here today is not the miniature person who's been shrunk down to look like a kid in the game. However, the fact that the game now supports ray tracing with Big Navi, or rather, all of the RDNA2 cards. But we're using the 6900 XT and we are running it at 1080p. Now, I know there's going to be people going out there, Keith, why are you running 1080p? And it's like, well, this game is already really heavy. We don't have Fidelity FX Super Resolution, or FSR, from AMD just yet. We also don't have a whole lot of artificial intelligence to tell these cars to drive around my little car here. So what we're going to do is, this is the game running at the Ultra preset. And no, I'm not moving around just yet. We will be moving here in a second. But we're running just over 120 FPS or so. There is a slight GPU limitation running at 97-98 FPS, and well, you can see the memory utilization is at 8700 megabytes, or just right at 9 gigabytes. But one of the things here is the game. Look, I just want to go before we go into this. The game has an absolutely wonderful ambient occlusion built into the engine. The way they do it looks really, really good. The reflections aren't bad, so the game already does look really good. So this is Johnny Silverhand's little Porsche here. This is this other black car here. You can see the cube maps in it, reflecting what it thinks is around the world. We've got water there, reflecting some, see, you can see it here as I move the camera down. The ambient occlusion and the reflections on the tile are disappearing. That's just part of the screen space stuff there. So again, over 120 FPS. Now, I already know before I hit this button that we're going to see a pretty big hit. Now, take a look at the mirrors over there, or the windows over there, those kind of reflective surfaces. They're going to get a good hit with the reflections. Down in here in the shadows should get some uptick. We're going to turn everything on, and then we're going to tweak around with it and see what we can get as far as performance goes. So, I'm going to go right into the settings here, right into the graphics. See, we've got it on Ultra. We're going to leave everything just like it is. We're not going to be jacking around with all of these settings. We're going to come down here to the ray tracing settings, and we are going to use the Fidelity FX Cast options here in just a moment to kind of take a look at it. So we're going to go ahead and turn ray tracing on. Now it turns it on, but it leaves everything kind of here. So we're going to turn reflections on, ray trace shadows on, and then we're just going to turn ray trace lighting to medium. And that's your basic ambient occlusion, and quite honestly, this one is more important in this game than reflections or shadows, because it really makes the world pop a little bit. All right, so we went down from 120 to 140 to 43 FPS. But if you look over here, the shadows are much softer. They kind of cascade a little bit more than what they did before. You got the reflections in the windows up there of the actual world around it. Even the car, like, it's not a mirror. A lot of people are like, oh, the reflections are all mirrors. Not quite. So the car has a certain level of roughness to it. This here car, one thing I'll gripe about is that I don't have a reflection of your own character. You can see characters walking by around in the world behind me, but you can't see me, which is so awkward with this game. You can see here, you can see the world reflecting in these puddles, and you can see here whenever you go to look down, the world doesn't start to disappear in the corners of the edges of the screen. You can still see the world in there. But 40 FPS, that's pretty rough. I mean, it looks good, don't get me wrong, but that's kind of rough. I don't think anybody with a 6900 XT is going to want to be playing around there. Let's jump in and see what Fidelity FX Cast can do before we start actually turning down the settings in the game. We're going to leave these all on. Let's leave dynamic on. We'll go to static and we'll go to 75%. Now what that does is runs a 75% internal resolution. If it'll let me do 75. There we go. It runs a 75% internal resolution and applies contrast adaptive sharpening to it to kind of smooth it back out. Now that got us right there at that 60 FPS, and quite honestly, it looks fine. Yeah, no, this actually... Now, I know that a lot of people aren't going to want to play a game like this on this kind of hardware at this frame rate, but what if we started tweaking, so see what kind of impact shadows. Let's go here, see what kind of impact shadows start making. We go ahead and turn the shadows off. Now did that gain us much? Not really. Actually, the shadows look, well, they don't look a whole lot, well, they look different, but it didn't adjust the performance. Let's turn shadows back on. Settings, because the shadows are only coming from like the sun, so on the building and such. Let's see, turn shadows back on. Let's turn reflections off. Let's see what reflections give us. We turn that off. Now that's a huge boost to performance, but now you can see the cars are looking flat. Let's see. You know, it is what it is. Let's see if we can. That gives you a good boost, but you're not getting that big pop anymore. So let's setting. Let's turn reflections back on. Let's turn ray trace lighting off. Hit resume. Let's see what we got here. All right, so performance stayed about where it was with the light reflections, but oh, now we've got more reflections because we've got more cars showing up in the scene. Let's see. That's my car. Reflections there. Reflections are back over here. Reflections really are kind of the biggest noticeable, like the biggest impact visually whenever you turn those on. And it even changes the reflective nature of those tiles on the floor to where they reflect light off of them. Let's see here. I'm trying to get a good angle where we can just kind of start toying with stuff. All right, let's go back in here. Let's turn off reflections. Let's turn off shadows. Let's just turn on lighting. Let's turn lighting to medium, see what that gets us. About the same. So it's almost going to be a, you know, if you're running one of these cards and you run it at 1080p and you want a bit higher and more stable frame rate, you're definitely going to want to. And one of the reasons I did it here at the Kabuki market is because it's open, it's wide open, it is impacted by the shadows heavily, reflections are all over the place, even if they're not, you know, all in your face kind of reflections, but they're everywhere, as well as the lighting is heavily impacted here. So this is one of the heavier parts of the game when it comes to these. Now, of course, if you go in like the nightclubs or like Afterlife, it's going to be even heavier. But let's you know what, let's turn this off. Let's turn everything back on. Let's turn on dynamic, and we're going to target 60 FPS, and we're going to let it go all the way down to 50. Let's see. Turn everything on. Can we get it? Can it handle it? Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Okay. Ooh. Dynamic is something else, isn't it? I would not recommend using this setting right now. Let's stop that. Let's make that go away. Let's see. I'm gonna just turn off. I'm gonna turn off ray tracing, lighting. We're gonna turn off fidelity FX, cast, dynamic cast, and we're gonna go back to normal. You're just looking at it back up to 120, 130. What if we turn on cast? Oh, not dynamic. On 75%. Let's see how that runs in the game. Now we're doing 140 plus. So yeah, I mean, you're gonna want to kind of play around with this. It's there now. This is how it should have been from the beginning, but it's good to see that they finally give you the option if you're an AMD owner with the RDNA2 cards, if you want to play around with it and you want to use it. So, you know, 1080p, 70 plus FPS with reflections on. You know what? Guys, it's really not that bad. This game could have ran a lot worse. It's not been the most performant game that has come out. It's not the one that you go, man, everything can run it. It's, you know, it's almost gotten a pretty bad rap when it comes to performance. So I'm quite happy to see how well it's running here. So I know it's not stupid high frame rates, but it's running surprisingly well. And I can't wait to see how things go when FSR is implemented, because this is a game, I mean, I'm still playing it. I'm 60 hours into it, so I'll keep playing it. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. You know what they got to do, guys. Hey, let me go over here. I'm going to punch a cop. Let's see. Is this cop? Hey, copper. Bam. All right, out. I'm out, guys. Bye. Alright guys, I want to thank you for making it to the end of this video. If you liked what you saw here, make sure you hit that subscribe button down there. Hit the bell notification so that we don't miss you in the future. And if you want to catch out something you may have missed, hit up the links over here on this side. And we'll catch you in the next one.